Reading an article for my students. This is Hosono tells IAEA that Japan will have safer nuclear future. Vienna. Japan's minister in charge of handling the Fukushima nuclear crisis told a gathering of the UN Atomic Agency Monday his country would have a safer future. I am convinced we will definitely overcome this challenge and find a prosperous, safer nuclear future, Goshi Hosono said at the 151-nation International Atomic Energy Association, IAEA's General Conference in Vienna. He said Japan would benefit from the lessons learned from the March disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi plant when an earthquake and tsunami knocked out cooling systems, releasing radiation as reactors suffered meltdown. Hosono said in Vienna he was aware that many individuals are critical regarding nuclear power. I think it is important that we are mindful of various views. He added, in Japan there's a kind of consensus that we would like to reduce the dependency on nuclear power, but the speed and the method by which that would be achieved to attain such a target has yet to be identified. 6 months after the massive earthquake and tsunami that caused the disaster at the 4-decades-old plant, emergency crews are still struggling to stop radiation seeping out. Hosono said the government and plant operator Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO, hoped to achieve a stable cold shutdown by the end of the year. He said lowering temperatures below the boiling point at the reactors would reduce the danger of further meltdown and release of additional radioactivity from the fuel rods inside. Hosono also said Monday that the International Atomic Energy Agency plans a mission in October to help plan further decontamination of the accident region. But he told a later news conference that this stage was a separate issue from that of allowing the thousands of people evacuated from around Fukushima to return home. There are a number of measures needed, and this will take some time, he told reporters through an interpreter. Hosono said the Japanese government last week submitted to the IAEA a new in-depth report on the crisis, which was presented by Japanese officials to the agency on Monday. This report, following a first one in June, said that stable progress has been made at the stricken plant, with the amount of radioactive material released and radiation exposure to workers significantly reduced. It also gave an update on what was being done to decontaminate the surrounding area, as well as plans for what to do with the plant once the reactors have been stabilized. The IAEA was expected to endorse at its gathering, which runs until Friday, a safety action plan drawn up by Agency Chief Yukiya Amano, himself Japanese, in the wake of the Fukushima accident. Critics say the 12-point plan falls well short of promises made in the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, which sparked worries worldwide about nuclear power and that the steps it suggests are voluntary. Many of Amano's original proposals, such as mandatory peer reviews of reactors by foreign experts and 10% of the planet's plants being inspected in the next 3 years, were watered down. France, for example, wanted the action plan to be tougher, and Energy Minister Eric Besson called Monday at the IAEA for peer reviews to become standard practice worldwide by mid-2012, and for their results to be published. Last week, the world's nuclear power plant exporters announced in Washington a first-ever code of conduct, which they hope will raise safety standards, prevent proliferation, and enhance environmental protection. But the commitments by firms such as France's Areva U.S.-Japan firm GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy and U.S. giant Westinghouse, 3 years in the making, are not legally binding. Okay, let's go through some of the underlined vocabulary here. I'm convinced, I'm sure. We will overcome, we will get over. Prosperous means rich or successful. Lessons learned, if you say you learned a lesson, you had a bad experience and you will not make the same mistake twice. Those are, you learned your lesson. We sometimes say, he learned his lesson. Or if you do something bad, someone might tell you, I hope you learned your lesson. I hope you learned your lesson. Okay, let's see. Suffering. Suffering is the same as experience, but only for something bad. He's suffering from cancer, for example. He suffered a mental breakdown. The nuclear power plant suffered a meltdown. Critical is criticizing, hihanteki. Are mindful of, meaning considering or thinking of. Consensus in line 14 means an agreement. To attain is to reach or to get. To reach or to get. Line 19, you see the word seeping out, which means leaking out. The radiation is seeking out. We have a leak. We have a leak and it's seeping. There's a leak in the roof. Water is seeping into the room. Let's see. Decontaminate is to clean up. Decontamination, the cleaning up of something. Line 30, measures. Measure is taisaku, something you do to fix something. Please remember line 31, through an interpreter, not by an interpreter. You could say using an interpreter. Line 32, submitted is to hand in. Teiansuru, I think. Propose or submit. In-depth means kuwashi, detailed. Stable progress means steady progress. 38, decontaminate means to clean up. We talked about that. Now, in line 35, stable is steady, but in line 40, stabilized means made safe. Line 41, endorse is to support. There are three types of endorse. Endorse a check, which means write your name on it so it can be taken to the bank and you get the cash. Endorse a campaign. Endorse a candidate. I endorse Obama for president. I support him. Or endorse a product. For example, I endorse this camera. This is a good camera. I think you should buy this camera. Sometimes you pay someone to endorse something, and that's called a paid endorsement. To fall short of means to not be enough. Immediate aftermath means right after something. Oh, go back to line 43, and you see in the wake of. In the wake of and in the aftermath is the same. The resulting situation. 41, mandatory, line 41, mandatory peer reviews. Mandatory means you must do. It's required. Line 49, watered down is to make something weaker. Line 54, first ever means first time in history. Code of conduct is like a list of rules that you must follow. Line 55, proliferation means spreading of something. Line 57, in the making. In the making means making. It's the time it takes to make something. This movie has been 10 years in the making. We've been making this movie for 10 years. And binding, legally binding means it's not really official. Like you don't. You can promise, but if you don't keep your promise, nothing's going to happen. Sometimes a promise is legally binding. It's a contract. So if you break it, then you could get in trouble. You might have to pay a fine, pay some money, or go to jail. Okay, that's your article. Study hard. See you soon.